Have you ever felt like you're kind of stuck, in this weird place with English? Like you can understand it when you're reading, listening, no problem. But then when you try to speak, it's like your tongue turns to lead. It's so strange, right? Your brain gets it, but your mouth just won't cooperate. And that's exactly what we're going to deep dive into today.
Yeah, I see what you mean.
Why does this happen? And the big question, how can we actually get over this hurdle? Like, how can you become more fluent, even if you're just practicing by yourself?
Yeah, it's a really interesting question, right? And it kind of comes down to like the difference between what we call passive knowledge and active knowledge. So you can, learn all these grammar rules, memorize tons of vocabulary, maybe even write really well in English. But when it comes to actually speaking, it's like you got to put all that knowledge into action, and that can be way harder.
Right. It's like you've read all the books about dancing, you know all the steps in your head, but then you get to the club and you freeze up.
Huh. Yeah, that's a perfect analogy. And then you add in the pressure of like an actual conversation, right? You got to think on your feet, come up with stuff quickly. No wonder it feels so much harder than just understanding.
I understand, but can't speak English. I bet a lot of our listeners are like, yep, that's me. It's like the perfect phrase to describe this frustrating feeling. So let's break it down. Why does this happen? Is it just that we don't practice enough?
Well, practice is, super important, of course, but there's a bit more to it than that. Think about how our brains actually work, right? So when we're understanding English, we're mostly using those parts of the brain that process language. Makes sense. But when we're speaking, we're using a whole bunch of different brain areas, like the ones that control movement and planning and decision making. It's really complex.
Wow, so speaking is not just knowing the language, it's like coordinating this whole brain orchestra, huh?
Exactly. And when we get stressed or feel pressure, our brains tend to fall back on like these familiar patterns, even if those patterns aren't, the best for fluent speech.
So that's why we might overthink grammar rules or like get stuck trying to find the absolute perfect word, even though something simpler would have worked just fine.
Yeah, that's it. And that's why just knowing the grammar and vocabulary isn't enough. You got to actually train your brain to access all that stuff super smoothly and use it right there in the conversation.
Okay, that makes sense. So how do we actually rewire our brains for better fluency then?
Yeah.
What are some steps we can take to get over this like gap between understanding and speaking?
Well, there's this 4-step method that we've seen work really well. It's not about like cramming more grammar rules or memorizing a zillion new words. It's about creating a system for learning and practicing that actually like works with how your brain naturally learns language. You know what I mean?
Okay, I'm definitely intrigued. I bet our listeners are too. So tell us, what's the first step?
The first step is all about organizing your learning in a way that helps your brain access and use information really quickly. It's called learn everything by topic.
Learn everything by topic. That sounds kind of huge at first. Can you maybe break that down a bit?
Sure. Think about it this way. When you're having a conversation, you don't just like randomly pull words out of thin air, right? You're using knowledge that's connected to what you're talking about, the topic.
Yeah, for sure. If I'm talking about like my hobbies, I'll probably use different words and phrases than if I'm talking about the news or planning a trip,
Right, exactly. So instead of learning language in this kind of random way, this method is all about focusing on specific topics that you actually care about and that are relevant to your life, So think about the kinds of conversations you have in English or want to have. Maybe it's about work or your family or traveling or books and movies, whatever.
So I basically create categories for these topics, almost like, I don't know, folders in my brain where I can put all the related words and phrases.
Yeah, exactly. And a really good way to do this is to start a speaking notebook. Get yourself a notebook, divide it into sections for these different topics, and then start filling it with like words and phrases that you come across that fit into each category.
So it's like my personal language toolbox, organized by topic.
Yeah.
I love that idea.
Yeah.
Like, wouldn't I still need to, learn grammar rules and stuff?
Absolutely. Grammar is really important. It's like the structure that holds your language together. But it's a lot easier to learn and use grammar when you're doing it within like meaningful topics and real life situations, right?
Okay, yeah, that makes sense. So I've got my speaking notebook, I've got my topics, and I'm starting to collect vocabulary. What's the next step in this fluency plan?
This is where things get kind of interesting. The second step is right before you speak.
Wait, right before you speak? That sounds a bit backwards, doesn't it? We're trying to get better at speaking, so why focus on writing?
Well, because writing is actually a really powerful way to like absorb the language and get more fluent. Think about it, when you're writing, you have time to really think things through, to plan, to try out different words and structures. It's not like speaking where you're under pressure to be fast.
So like a dress rehearsal for the real performance, right? I can practice my lines, get comfortable with the flow of the language before I actually have to, perform for a real audience.
That's a great way to put it. And when you're writing, you're actually creating what we call prefabricated sentences in your mind. These are sentences that you've already built and practiced, so you can easily access them when you need them in a conversation.
Prefabricated sentences. I like the sound of that. So it's like I'm building a mental library of these ready-to-use phrases that I can just pull out whenever I'm speaking.
Exactly. And the more you write, the bigger and more diverse your library gets, which gives you more options to express yourself fluently and, with confidence.
Okay, I'm starting to see the logic here. But how does writing before speaking actually help me get over, like, the fear or hesitation I feel when I try to have a conversation?
Well, when you write, you're basically training your brain to handle language in a more structured and controlled way. And that can help reduce the feeling of being overwhelmed and make speaking feel less scary.
So it's like taking the pressure off, giving my brain a chance to warm up and get comfy with the language before I have to use it in real time.
Yeah, exactly. And as you write, you're also reinforcing grammar rules and expanding your vocabulary, which just makes your foundation for fluency even stronger.
Wow, this is making me realize how much I've been ignoring writing in my language learning. I've been so focused on finding people to talk to, but I haven't really spent much time building a solid base through writing.
Yeah, a lot of people think that speaking practice is the only way to get fluent. But writing can actually make you progress faster and make speaking feel way more natural and easier.
I'm really glad we're talking about this because I think a lot of language learners out there are missing out on this. So can we dive a little deeper into this whole right before you speak idea? Could you give us some real examples of how to make it work?
Absolutely. When we come back, we'll explore some practical tips and techniques for making writing part of your language routine. We'll even look at some fun exercises that will make you love writing your way to fluency. Stick with us.
Okay, so we're convinced writing can be this secret weapon for getting fluent. But how do we actually use it? It's not like I'm sitting down and writing essays every day.
Right. No, you don't need to do that. The good thing about this approach is, you can make it work for your own interests and stuff you do every day. Remember those speaking notebook topics? That's where the writing magic happens.
Oh, right. Okay, so let's say one of my topics is, I don't know, food. Because who doesn't love talking about food, right? So how would writing help me get better at, talking about all those delicious meals and things?
Okay, imagine you tried this amazing new recipe last night. Instead of just thinking, oh, that was good, try writing a couple sentences about it. Describe the flavors, how it felt in your mouth, the smells.
So instead of just saying the pasta was good, I might write something like, the creamy pesto sauce was just perfect on those al dente noodles and the fresh basil. Oh, man, it was like I was in Italy.
Yeah, see, now you're talking. You're not just remembering words about food. You're playing with descriptive language, different sentences. That's how you build fluency.
I can totally see how that would make it so much easier to, describe that meal to a friend later on. So, I've already practiced the conversation in my head, but, on paper.
Exactly. And here's another cool technique. Instead of writing about your own experiences, try summarizing an article or video about food.
Oh, okay. So if I watched, say, a documentary about, organic farming.
Yeah.
I could try to write a little paragraph summarizing the main points.
Yep, that's the idea. This forces you to use different words and grammar than you would in a normal chat with someone.
It's like a workout for my language muscles. But what about those times when I just totally blank, the right word just disappears from my brain?
That's when a tool like AZD can be a lifesaver. Remember that online tool we talked about for vocabulary and sentences?
Oh yeah, AZDT. I'm really curious to hear how that can help me, get over those frustrating vocabulary blocks.
Okay, so let's stick with food. Imagine you're writing about this dish, but you just can't think of the right word to describe the flavor, right? So you type in a simple word like taste or flavor into AZD.
It would give me this whole list of synonyms and related words like tangy, savory, umami, delectable. Suddenly, I'm a gourmet chef with words.
That's it. And what's really cool is AZD doesn't just give you words on their own. It shows you how to actually use them in real sentences.
So it's not just making my vocabulary bigger. It's showing me the right way to use those words grammatically.
That's so helpful. And here's where it gets even better. Let's say AZ Decay gives you a sentence like, the dish had a surprisingly pungent aroma. Now, you can take that sentence and play with it.
Oh, so instead of just copying it, I could change it to fit my own experience. Like, the curry had a pungent aroma that filled my whole kitchen.
Exactly. You're taking those like pre-made blocks and using them to create your own unique expressions. That's how you really make the language your own.
This is amazing. It's like ACK is this bridge between like knowing words passively and actually using them. It gives me the tools and the confidence to actually use all those fancy words I've been keeping in my head.
Yes, that's exactly what we want. We want you to go beyond just recognizing words and actually start using them like a pro. And the more you write, the easier it gets.
Okay, I'm sold. Writing before speaking is definitely going in my fluency toolkit. But I'm curious, are there any specific types of writing that are like extra helpful for getting better at speaking?
That's a great question. And it leads us perfectly to the next step. Write down every new word.
Okay, that sounds pretty straightforward.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm guessing it's more than just like scribbling words randomly on a napkin, right?
You're right. It's about being really intentional with how you learn new words. Remember that awesome speaking notebook we talked about? That's where this really comes to life.
So we're not just writing down any old word. We're weaving them into our speaking notebook, putting them in the right topic sections.
Exactly. Let's say you're reading an article about traveling and you see the word picturesque. Instead of just thinking, oh, that's a nice word, take a second to actually write it down in your travel section.
And to really make it stick, maybe I could even write a little sentence using it. Like, the cute little village in the valley was incredibly picturesque.
Perfect. By actually working with the word, you're creating this stronger connection in your brain. And that makes it way more likely that you'll remember it and use it when you're speaking.
It's like I'm planting a seed in good soil, giving it everything it needs to grow into, this beautiful flower of fluency. But I gotta be honest, sometimes I get overwhelmed by how many new words I see. How do I know which ones are worth writing down?
That's a great point. That's where you need to be a bit picky. You don't need to write down every single new word. Focus on words that are useful for your interests, your goals, the stuff you actually talk about in English.
So like, if I love cooking, I might focus on all those cool culinary terms, while someone who loves movies might focus on, words about film and stuff.
Exactly. You're customizing your vocabulary learning to fit your own language goals. And remember, you can always go back and add more words later as your interests change.
This is making me realize I have so much control over how I learn. It's not just about passively taking in any word that comes along. It's about actively choosing the words that will build my own unique way of speaking English.
I love that. That feeling of ownership is so important for staying motivated and really enjoying the learning process.
This has been so eye-opening. The power of writing for building vocabulary and getting fluent is amazing. But I know at the end of the day, the goal is to actually speak. So how do we take all this writing practice and turn it into, confident, flowing conversation?
The big question. And that takes us to the last and probably the most important step in this whole method. Practice. Talk to yourself.
Talk to myself. Now, I know we talked about this a bit before, but I gotta admit, the idea of having whole conversations with myself still feels kind of, weird.
I get it. It can feel strange at first, but honestly, talking to yourself is one of the best and easiest ways to get fluent. And it's totally normal. Language learners all over the world do it.
Okay, so I'm not going crazy. There's actually a method to this self-talk madness.
Absolutely. Think of it as a safe space to try things out, to make mistakes, to get used to the sounds and rhythms of English without anyone judging you.
So it's like having my own private language lab where I can do all kinds of experiments without being afraid of messing up.
Exactly. You can try different phrases, practice different accents, even rehearse conversations you might have. And the best part, you can do it anywhere, anytime.
That changes everything. I don't have to wait to find someone to talk to or feel awkward in a group. I can literally practice my English while I'm walking my dog, washing dishes, even just spacing out on the bus.
Exactly. And by talking to yourself regularly, you're training your brain to access and use language faster and smoother.
It's like I'm building muscle memory for fluency. The more I work those muscles, the stronger and more flexible they get.
That's such a great way to put it. And the cool thing about self-practice is that you can totally personalize it and adapt it to whatever you need and want to achieve.
Okay, I'm ready to give this self-talk thing a real shot. But I still feel kind of lost on how to structure these solo practice sessions. Any tips on how to make the most of my self-talk time?
For sure. When we come back, we'll dig into some specific strategies and exercises to make self-practice fun, effective, and yeah, maybe even a little bit fun. Stay tuned.
All right, I'm ready to unleash my inner chatterbox. Bring on the self-talk. But I gotta admit, I still kind of need like a raid map, you know? Where do I even start? Am I supposed to be standing in front of the mirror, having these full-on imaginary conversations with myself?
Uh-huh. I love that visual. And yeah, that can definitely be a good way to do it. But self-talk doesn't have to be that, formal. The whole point is to just practice speaking English in a way that feels relaxed and comfortable for you.
So no need to like dress up for these imaginary chats. Sweatpants and a messy bun are totally acceptable.
Totally. The more comfortable you feel, the easier it is to like let go of those inhibitions and just let the words come out?
Okay, good to know. Phew. But what about like the actual content of these self-talk sessions?
Yeah.
Do I just babble on about whatever comes to mind? Or is there a better way to, structure it?
Structure can definitely be helpful, especially when you're first starting out. And remember those topic sections we talked about in your speaking notebook? That's a great place to find inspiration for your self-talk practice.
Right, right. So let's say I choose travel as my topic.
Yeah.
Would I just start describing places I've been or like dream of going to?
Yep, exactly. You could talk about your favorite travel memories, describe the sights and sounds of different places, even plan out your next imaginary trip, get creative with it.
So I might say something like, oh man, I can't wait to finally visit Japan someday. Their culture is so fascinating, and I would love to explore the like crazy streets of Tokyo and the peaceful beauty of Mount Fuji. Something like that.
See, perfect. And as you're talking, really pay attention to your pronunciation, the rhythm of your speech, those natural pauses. Don't be afraid to play around with different accents or how your voice goes up and down.
Like I'm my own personal speech coach, giving myself feedback and pep talks along the way. But what about those times when I just totally blank? When I can't think of the right word or phrase? Should I just like give up and move on?
No way. Never give up. Those moments are actually like gold mines for learning. If you hit a roadblock, don't be afraid to stop for a second. Look back at your speaking notebook, maybe even use a dictionary. It's all part of the process.
So it's like a little treasure hunt, trying to find that missing piece to complete my language puzzle. And once I find it, I can add it to my notebook and practice using it in all sorts of ways.
Exactly. Self-talk is all about exploring and discovering. It's about celebrating those aha moments and building your language skills brick by brick.
This is making me realize that we have so much control over our own learning. We don't have to wait for like the perfect conversation partner or the ideal classroom. We can create our own opportunities to get fluent anytime, anywhere, just by talking to ourselves.
I love it. And the more you do it, the more natural and easy speaking English will become. You'll start to notice that those awkward silences you used to have will get replaced by a nice flow of confident speech.
That's amazing. It's like I'm unlocking this hidden well of fluency inside myself. But are there like any specific self-talk techniques or exercises that can help me, speed up this process? I'm all about efficiency.
I'm glad you asked. There are tons of fun and creative ways to, spice up your self-talk practice. One of my favorites is called shadowing.
Oh, yeah, you mentioned that before. It's basically like copying how native speakers talk, right? Kind of like, I don't know, karaoke for your voice.
Yes. Find a video or audio of someone speaking English in a way that you really like. Could be a TED Talk, a movie scene, even a podcast episode, anything that grabs your attention.
And then I just try to imitate them, like their pronunciation, their rhythm, everything, as closely as I can.
Exactly. It's like you're borrowing their voice for a little bit, absorbing their fluency, and then making it a part of your own way of speaking.
That's so cool. It's like being a language chameleon, changing to fit different styles and accents. But won't I sound kind of robotic at first?
Probably, yeah. But don't worry about being perfect at the beginning. It's all about getting a feel for the natural flow of the language, the way native speakers connect words, all those little nuances in how they pronounce things.
And as I practice more and more, I'll start to internalize those patterns and make them my own, right? It's like I'm teaching my voice to dance to the music of English.
That's a beautiful way to put it. Another great self-talk technique is role-playing.
Oh, so this is where my inner actor comes out.
Exactly. Think up different situations and have conversations with yourself. It could be anything from ordering a coffee to giving a presentation at work to having a serious talk with a friend, whatever you can imagine.
So, like, if I have a job interview coming up, I could practice answering typical interview questions out loud, maybe even think up some follow-up questions they might ask.
Exactly. The best thing about role playing is that you can make the scenarios super relevant to your own life and goals, which makes it way more engaging and fun.
This is opening up so many possibilities. It's like I have a never-ending supply of conversation partners, all living rent-free in my head. But, I have a confession. Sometimes I get so caught up in wanting to sound perfect that I just freeze up and end up not saying anything at all. Any advice for getting over that fear of making mistakes?
Oh, I totally get that. It's so common, especially when you're learning a new language. But remember, fluency isn't about being perfect. It's about being able to communicate. It's about expressing yourself clearly and confidently, even if you mess up a few times along the way.
So it's more about progress, not perfection.
Yes, exactly. Look at those mistakes as opportunities to learn and grow. Don't be afraid to laugh at yourself, try new things, experiment a little. The more you let go of that need to be perfect, the more you'll enjoy learning and unlock your true potential.
This has been such an amazing deep dive. I'm leaving with a whole new way of thinking about language learning, and I feel so motivated to take charge of my own journey to fluency. Any last words of wisdom for our listeners before they set off on their self-talk adventures?
Just remember, fluency is a journey, not a destination. Be kind to yourself, celebrate your wins, and never stop exploring the awesomeness of language.
Well said. To all our incredible listeners out there, I challenge you. Embrace the power of self-talk. Turn those everyday moments into chances to boost your fluency. Talk to yourself while you're cooking, cleaning, commuting, even just daydreaming. You might feel a little silly at first, but trust me, the results will be worth it. Thanks for joining us on this incredible journey.